So I generally open up this beautiful service with this prayer for paradise on earth. And we can say it together. I think there's copies. Is there not? Did I not place them there? Oh, did you see them, Jill? Yes, you can hand them out. Thank you. And everything that I give you, I can give you references so that for those who seek deeper study, and as Jesus said, for those that are babies, you give them pablum. And for those that seek and they're a little older and want the stronger meat, you can literally take it deeper and take the deep dive in. So everything that I'm going to speak of, I have references on, and generally I'll give you them. And if I've forgotten them, just reach out to me and I will give them to you. And I'll even bring the books and the references of who wrote them, just to allow us that wider perspective. But this is a beautiful prayer for paradise on earth. And I truly believe that we were created for that. And you're going to see this beautiful, I've got two very exciting things to talk about today. I'm going to do the fun one first, and then I'm going to do this most beautiful holy one about the pearl. So you can see there's symbolism in pearls. Okay. So let's say this together. This is Prayer for Paradise on Earth with the JoeRayFellowship.org. Great God of light, we behold your plan unfolding, whereby all spiritual clouds are dispelled, impurity and error cleansed from the realms of spirit and matter. The age of light and joy is being born. Through your infinite compassion, misguided forces waken unto truth, and negative practices cease, while forces of light unhindered restore the world to peace. All of nature receives your loving influence and finds its rightful place. Peaceful clouds move across brilliant skies, and the fragrance of countless flowers floats upon the air. Abundant harvests glorify the earth, every corner filled with happy voices. Boundaries between countries vanish, and ancient conflicts disappear as if dreams. All people are united, encircled by your light, and guided by your wisdom. Through service to humanity, all are blessed with health, peace, and prosperity. Great God of light, strengthen us with courage and wisdom to follow your will and realize paradise on earth. Isn't that beautiful?
Yes.
And I would say to you, we can have it. We can absolutely have it. And what we're going to start here is I'm going to explain just a little bit on what we're going to do. And we're going to start from the beginning as I kind of bring everyone down this beautiful, it's a path and journey into higher wisdom teachings that were left for us in a sealed jar. So let's, what am I going to speak on today? What is this Nag Hammadi Library? So let me just go in a little bit of a summary for you. 2 Egyptian farmers discovered the Nag Hammadi texts in 1945. They were in a sealed jar containing a 13 volumes. So these are books, leather-bound books. A library of Coptic papyrus books hidden beneath a large boulder near the town of Nag Hammadi in Upper Egypt. So these were sealed containers. They're authentic. They have them, right? The world was reintroduced to this long-forgotten branch of Gnostic Christianity from the Greek word gnosis, which means knowledge. The codices are 13 leather-bound volumes dated to the mid-4th century. They do think that there's a couple in there that could be from the 2nd century, and that's going to be important. That contain an unprecedented collection of more than 50 texts. This was an unbelievable treasure trove, including some that had been composed as early as the 2nd century. Do you see that? So I'm just showing you where the date is. 2nd century, and you're going to start to see when I go back to our regular Gospels, these are close. These are the beginnings. They're close. From a historical perspective, these codices provide a clear picture of the diverse theological beliefs that found expression through early Christianity. Gnosticism and its classically inspired philosophical ideas permeated not just early Christian thought, but also the Jewish and pagan traditions from which Christianity itself arose. So it gives you a better, maybe clear perspective of all that was happening during this era, okay? And we have to keep that in perspective. These authentic texts give us a glimpse into the suppressed and alternative versions of early Christianity. So it's not just what they decided to put in the King James Version. There were these other sects, these other priests, and they have called them heretical. Well, I will tell you, was Galileo in prison for being a heretic? Yes, by that church. And he was right, wasn't he? So there's been many instances, whether it's the church or whether it's the state, right? Or whether it's the medical profession. So think about the fact that sometimes the voice of truth is the one that gets trounced on. I can remember, and my son, Ken is in medical school, we were talking, true story about the American medical profession. I knew this decades ago, that it was a veterinarian, I believe, and he saw that the farmers knew that when all their animals got sick with like an ulcer, they would give them antibiotics and it would fix them because they didn't have expensive tests and everything to run each animal through. And he started looking, he said, I think that ulcers are caused from a bacteria in humans. The American medical profession didn't believe him. And so he had to turn around and poison himself with the bacteria, take an x-ray, show that there was nothing wrong, eat and ingest the bacteria, and then turn around and show that they had an ulcer, and then take the antibiotics and cure it before they believed him. And in front of this, whole conference, he had to show the x-rays. And so I had been telling my son kind of this when he was growing up, because I'm into alternative kind of medicine. And Kenneth's professor in med school was very impressed that Kenneth actually knew this, because he was able to raise his hand and go, oh, I know all about this. Think about the rigid belief patterns that are in place, whether it's the Sadducees or the Pharisees, right? Yeah. Or the powers that be and the politics, the kings, right? Or the priesthoods, or the medical profession, whatever it might be, that when absolute power corrupts absolutely. And as we talked about, history gets written by the winner. So how many texts were destroyed in the Library of Alexandria? How many times have we gone into these countries and burnt, the missionaries burnt their ancient sacred texts, and the Indians, the American Indians, but mostly in South America, they were crying because their ancient texts were being burned. Do you see this? So who are we to decide what really is the truth? It is up to us with a questioning mind and spirit to unearth some of this knowledge and use our own gifts to decipher. So that's where, yes, Gnosticism was considered heretical, but I would tell you it's still worth looking at, and let's do a little bit of a dive into why it could be absolutely beautiful and makes a lot of sense. The Nag Hammadi codices were widely regarded as one of the most significant finds of the 20th century, but they're still relatively unknown. The churches should be talking about some of this, you would think, right? Or at least we should be doing a little bit more just, dispersing of this knowledge. So what we're going to be discussing specifically, which I'm going to do that second because we're going to do the fun one first, is Thomas's Gospel of the Infancy of Jesus Christ. That's the first one. And then I'm going to do the Hymn of the Pearl. It is absolutely exquisite. And we'll see what you guys think of this beautiful parable that he's speaking of. So let's see what these exciting teachings have to say for us. And we shall begin. So when we're speaking of heretics, we went into that a little bit. But let's talk about the Gospels, right? So a lot of us went to church, we're being told this is the authority, and just take it as it is. Do as I say. So how do we ascertain the full and definitive authorship of even the New Testament? Let's think about that for just a second. The New Testament is a complex matter with varying degrees of certainty for each book. While tradition attributes specific books to the apostles and their associates, modern biblical scholarship, based on historical and textual analysis, challenges or questions the traditional authorship of many New Testament writings. So when you really start looking at this, who wrote that? When was it written? Where was this person? Can we ascertain who this person was that's writing this, that we're taking as verbatim, right? As the mouthpiece of God. The Gospels and Acts are technically anonymous. Did you know that? When they were first written, they're written anonymously. And I'm going to show you that. Though through tradition later on, you'll start to see the church fathers try to assign this authorship. But when they were originally written, they were written anonymously. And I would tell you some of this you're going to start to see if you go back in time, even the mystical literature, you know that, Ken, that even the Kabbalion, it was written by the three initiates. They don't give their name. So a lot of this ancient knowledge was passed down and written anonymously. Okay, so that there's a reason for that. And some of the reasons were you don't want to be the one boastful saying it's just me. Just listen to the teaching, not take, let's say your ego and say, this is, I'm claiming this is, don't worship me. Think about the teachings. So there was a reason for this. But you have to realize when you really research that, some of those Gospels were absolutely written anonymously. And now later they're trying to say, well, who wrote that? So that's later on. Do you see that? We're trying to put the piece of the puzzle together. So Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, which we're familiar with, the four Gospels, do not name their authors. Papias, a 2nd century church leader, is the earliest source for the traditional when they start to attribute who wrote this. 2nd century, remember that. What did we just get through saying with the Gnostic Gospels? Some of those texts are actually literally written, right? And we know that those are authentic from 2nd century. So textual analysis shows that the authors of Matthew and Luke used Mark's Gospel as a source, meaning Matthew and Luke were not strictly written by eyewitnesses. So that's important to know. So this was something that was later written down. They're not there in the moment. And we're going to see that in some of, I've given lectures before where I have found in a lot of these other suppressed teachings where it was an eyewitness account of Jesus, which is beautiful. And that's one is the Gospel of Thomas. So the Pauline epistles, a key distinction is made between letters that are widely accepted as authentic and those that this Pauline authorship is disputed. So when you start looking at this, there's a lot of controversies among scholars, and that's what you really need to know. That we can't just definitively take this as truth, okay? Start to do a little bit of a deeper dive. Think of Hebrews. The author of this anonymous letter is unknown, and scholars widely reject the traditional attribution to Paul. So when you start looking at this, you're going, wait a second, I have to have a little bit of an open mind. And that's the only reason I'm talking about this, is because if you're going to sit here and bash the Gnostic Gospels, we need to go, wait a second, who is bashing it? Them? Is there any kind of legitimate, authentic validity to the Gnostic Gospels? Do they stand on par, is what I'm telling you, with our own Gospels in the Bible? And so it gives it a little bit more credence when you start to look at this. James 1 and 2 Peter, Jude 1, 2, and 3, and 3 John. The authorship of these general epistles is also uncertain and debated. Many are believed to be like made with a pseudonym. Someone else, they're writing under someone else, do you see, or taking a name. And then later on attributed to one of the apostles. And this is interesting because I did go into Revelations, and it's, everyone's thinking it's John of Patmos, and that's, where we're looking at this. But what a lot of these scholars, that's all I'm saying, is while the authorship identifies in Revelation himself as John, most biblical scholars today believe he was a different person from the author of the Gospel of John. So I'm just showing there's arguments to be had. Does that make sense? And then we know this. Mark was written in 60 to 70 CE. Matthew, 85 to 90 CE. Luke, 85 to 90, and John, 90 to 100. So you're starting to see, wait a second, let's go ahead and at least give the Gnostic Gospels a fair view, considering all these facts. So this is interesting. It is often said, even by scholars, and this is, I'm going to give you a book if you're going to ask me, where are you getting this, Robin? Just do a search, okay? But there's also this Bart, E-H-R-M-A-N, and he wrote a book called Forged, Writing in the Name of God, Why the Bible's Authors Are Not Who We Think They Are. So this is a book, and you can just read him. Now, he's very strong in his language, but he's doing at least a good deep dive, and you can start to see, wait a second, what is going on here? And he's saying, that's why he's saying they wrote things, but maybe not in their own name. Well, Ken and I know from the mystery schools that a lot of times you didn't write in your own name, and I told you the reason why, so that you don't get your ego involved in it, right? So he's a scholar, but he's saying, it's often said, even by critical scholars who should know better, that writing in the name of another was widely accepted in antiquity. So you could, even if it was this great sage, and maybe the sage goes away, but they keep this going, then maybe some of his disciples would write in that vein. So when you go back in time, could this be true? I'm saying, yes, it could be. So let's give the Gnostic Gospels a fair shake then, and let's see what they have to say. They're in 1945, we can get our hands on them, right? And so this is in our era that we can translate them and we can see them. We know they exist. You're going to see who translated them, but once the Nag Hammadi codices have been translated and published by a team of scholars, so that's why I'm just telling you these are scholars debating both everything, but we have them in our hands, right? By Claremont Graduate University's James M. Robinson. So we even know who translated them, okay? The document showed that the Gnostic Christianity was not the depraved cult described by the Orthodox Christian writers, but rather a legitimate religious movement that offered an alternative testament to Jesus' life and his teachings. The Nag Hammadi text, which represent a range of attitudes and beliefs in Gnostic Christianity and include everything from competing gospels to the apocalyptic revelations, all assert the primacy of spiritual and intellectual knowledge over physical action and material well-being. It's absolutely beautiful when you start to read some of these texts. The Apocryphon of John, for example, is the most important tractate of the classical Sethian Gnosticism. In it, the risen Jesus reveals to John, son of Zebedee, the truth of creation. Who wouldn't want to read that? Well, according to the Gnostic myth, this is interesting, and I taught on this, and you're going to see in the Path of Light, I did a couple of series of this, and you'll see the correlation when I talk about the pearl. But there was a beautiful man, and what he did, and it's he got hold of the Bruce Codicy in the 2nd century and the Askew Codicy, and he was schooled, he was a scholar, and he was schooled in the Eastern as well as all Christianity in the Western world. And he was able to bring these together, and he's speaking of Jesus, speaking to his disciples. And they had this from the 2nd century, these texts, and talking about this Jesus is donning this beautiful white robe that is sent from heaven after his crucifixion. And the disciples see it, and he rises up in all glory, but he's teaching his disciples. So you're going to see that correlation in here. According to the Gnostic myth, the God of the Hebrew Bible is actually a corrupted lower deity. And I have to tell you, I think when I read the Old Testament with God of vengeance and killing, that never meshed with me. Even as a child, I was going, that's not the God that I know. And if anyone, right, I had a near-death experience. I said, that's not my God. I don't know whose God that is. So the Gnosticism, believes that this is a corrupted lower deity, a jealous God, kill and sacrifice and not like. So I have to say, they have a little bit of truth in that, right? And so only through the intervention of Sophia, which is the female component, but it represents wisdom, can gnosis, or that's the knowledge within you, be revealed and salvation attained. Key, I'm going to go pearl. We're going to come back to that, okay? Thus, while the adherents of Gnostic Christianity certainly acknowledge the role of Jesus in their faith, and they believe that he's the Son of God, okay? There's no, disconnect there. Their theology placed greater significance on the intellectual revelation of his message than on the story of Jesus's life, his birth, and his resurrection. So they're placing more emphasis on what Jesus is trying to teach us. Do you see that? And, they're talking about Jesus' sayings. What did he say? What did he mean? And so, from a historical perspective, the Nag Hammadi codices provide this clear picture of what was going on during Jesus's time, or at least during the early Christianity, and that you have different branches, do you see, that have different beliefs. And that's why I thought it was interesting and wanted to tell everyone, where is this coming from? So we're going to now do the fun piece. And all of this you can find. You go to gnosis.org, gnosis.org, and I have to do the fun part because Ken's a father, you've got mothers. Wouldn't you all want to know what Jesus was like growing up? Like the divine Son that has all these powers, and in our, the King James Version, In our Bible, we have nothing, right? So wouldn't you be all over this? Of course, Jesus is my Savior. Are you kidding? I want to know all about him. Give me all of his life, right? So this was the fun one, and I'm not going to read all of it, but I'm going to read you some of the fun stories that have just, I've laughed, I've giggled, because this absolutely, first of all, whatever Jesus did, he healed. So when I tell you these stories, he got mad, they did him wrong, and he might have smited them, and he did kill them. And then healed them, or he might have struck them down blind, and then he healed them, and they had their side again, till he could maybe get some of his impulses to, a little bit more online, right? But I was laughing because, when you're a parent, you see these kids. If you're an aunt, if you're an uncle, you see this. The kids are a little bit impulsive. But can you imagine being a child and having all these powers? So let me tell you just a little bit of this. I just love it. I also want to show you that it's got a preface right here and where you're going to get this. Now, this was translated from the Clarendon Press in 1924, but they have, they translated. Remember, we found these texts and they translated them. So I'll just kind of give this to you, where it came from. The Latin version translated here is found in more manuscripts than the Greek. None of them, I think he said, is earlier than the 13th century. So there's some Syriac version of the manuscript, and then a few Greek, okay? But I like this one because it had a fuller translation. It gives us a little bit better understanding here. It starts out, the stories of Thomas the Israelite, the philosopher, concerning the works of the childhood of the Lord. I, Thomas the Israelite, tell unto you, even all the brethren that are of the Gentiles, to make known unto you the works of the childhood of our Lord Jesus Christ, and his mighty deeds, even all that he did when he was born in our land. Wherefore of the beginning is thus. This is little child Jesus when he was 5 years old and was playing at the ford of a brook. And he gathered together the waters that flowed into pools, and made them straightway clean, and commanded them by his word alone. And having made of soft clay, he fashioned thereof 12 sparrows. And it was the Sabbath when he did these things, or made them. And there were also many other little children playing with him. So you can just imagine he's playing, he's making the water clean and put them all together, right? And a certain Jew, when he saw what Jesus did playing upon the Sabbath day, departed straightway, and told his father Joseph, Lo, thy child is at the brook, and he hath taken clay and fashioned 12 little birds, and hath polluted the Sabbath day. Talk about a tattletale and about the rules and the regulations. And Joseph came to the place and saw, and he cried out to him, saying, Wherefore doest thou these things on the Sabbath? I can just tell you, can you imagine having the authority of God and that connection and knowing all the cosmos, and them telling you, no, I can't do anything on the day of Sabbath? These the little restrictions, the rules, wherefore doest thou these things on Sabbath, which it is not lawful to do? I have to laugh. But Jesus clapped his hands together and cried out to the sparrows and said to them, Go. And the sparrows took their flight and went away chirping. Out of clay, they start going. And when Jesus saw it, or when the Jews saw it, they were amazed. Because he literally fashioned them and they went flying, right? And departed and told their chief men that which they had seen Jesus do. But the son of Annas, the scribe, was standing there with Joseph, and he took a branch of a willow and dispersed the waters which Jesus had gathered together. So they're just being mean, right? Jesus had made this beautiful lake, right? And when Jesus saw what he had done, he was wroth, and said unto him, now imagine he's 5, O evil, ungodly, and foolish one, what hurt did the pools and the waters do thee? Behold, now also shalt be withered like a tree, and shalt not bear leaves, neither root nor fruit. And straightway that lad withered up wholly. But Jesus departed and went unto Joseph's house. He withered him. But the parents of him that was withered took him up, bewailing his youth, and brought him to Joseph, and accused him, for thou hast such a child which doeth such deeds. So you can see they took their child whose limbs were withered, right? So Jesus is getting into trouble. After that again he went through the village, and a child ran and dashed against his shoulder. And Jesus was provoked and said unto him, Thou shalt not finish thy course all the way. And immediately he fell down and died. But certain, when they saw what he had done, whence was this child born? For that every word of his is an accomplished work, because that's what the people were saying. And the parents of him that was dead came unto Joseph. So they're always running back to Mary and Joseph, going, look what your kid did, right? And blamed him, saying, Thou hast such a child, canst not dwell with us in the village? Or do thou teach him to bless and not curse, for he slayeth our children. So you're seeing they're going, stop, right? So, and Joseph called Jesus, the young child, apart and admonished him, saying, Wherefore doest thou do these such things, that suffer and hate us and persecute us? But Jesus said this to his father, I know that these thine words are not thine. Nevertheless, for thy sake I will hold my peace. But they shall bear their punishment. And straightway that was accursed were then smitten with blindness. Imagine him having these powers. Now, I'm just telling you, he gave them their sight again, okay? And he fixed it, just so you know. And they straightway, they accused him, they were smitten with blindness. And they saw that it was sore afraid and perplexed, and said concerning him that every word which he spoke, or they used the old word spake, whether it were good or bad, was a deed and became a marvel. And when he saw that Jesus had so done, Joseph arose and took hold of his son and wrung it sore. You can imagine the dad getting mad, right? And the young child was wroth and said unto him, It suffice thee or them to seek and not find, and verily thou hast done unwisely. Knowest thou not that I am thine? Vex me not. So you can just a little, vex me not, don't get me angry. This is little Jesus, like at 5 and 6, right? Now, this one I'll just kind of, he went to a teacher, because I've got to be mindful and I want to get through that pearl. He went to a certain teacher, Zacharias by name, and he heard that he wants to teach Jesus his letters. Well, basically, Jesus was teaching him. He couldn't imagine this out of this child, this babe's mouth. He thought he was going to be the teacher, and he sat in rapt attention. That's who Jesus was. So then, let's say, this is another interesting one. And as the Jews were counseling Zacharias, the young child laughed greatly and said, Now let those bear fruit that were barren, and let them see that were blind in heart. Because the teacher, remember this teacher, okay, then he loved him and he let Jesus teach him. I am come from above, and I may curse them, and call them to do things that are below, even as he commanded which hath sent me for your sakes. And when the young child ceased speaking, immediately all that were made whole, which had come under his curse. You see, he just fixes it. So I just wanted to tell you that. And no man after that durst, the old word, provoke him, lest he shall curse them, and he should be named. So you have all the people going, wait a second, I'm not going to say anything or do anything to Jesus. They're kind of mad at me. So, but now this is, and I can see this happening, and I'll give you one other one, and we'll do the pearl. Now, after certain days, Jesus was playing in the upper story of a certain house. And one of the young children that played with him fell down from the house and died. So you can see kind of, they were probably on a second story, right, and playing. And the other children, when they saw this, fled, and Jesus remained alone. He wasn't going to run, right? And all the children fled, and the parents of him that was dead came and accused him, and that he had cast him down, saying, Jesus did it. Jesus pushed my son down and killed my son. And Jesus said, I did not cast him down. But they reviled him still, said, yes, you did. You can see this happening, right? Then Jesus leapt down from the roof and stood by the body of the child and cried with a loud voice and said, Zeno, that was his name, for so was his name called, arise and tell me, did I cast thee down? And straightway arose and said, the kid that was dead, Jesus turns around, makes him alive and says, did I cast you down? I mean, you can see this. And the kid is alive again and says, nay, Lord, thou didst not cast me down, but didst raise me up. And when they saw it, they were amazed. And the parents of the child glorified God for the sign which had come to pass, and worshiped Jesus. Now, I mean, I'm just giggling because you can see this happening, right? They're blaming Jesus. Jesus didn't do it. He wasn't going to run. And so then he's mad. How dare you say that I did this? Here, make him alive again. Here, tell him. So some of these things are just precious when you go through this. Wouldn't you want to know this about Jesus? It makes him more real. It makes him, you're more even connected to him when you look at his entire life and how he grew up, right? You love him even more. And then this one was, let me see if I can find him. There was one that's actually, I think this was in the Bible, or at least there's a mention of it. So let me give you this last one, and then we're going to do the hymn. Now his father was a carpenter, and made at the time plows and yokes. And there was required of him a bed by a certain rich man that he should make for him. So that's how the Essenes made their money. They had a trade, right? And so Joseph was a carpenter. And whereas one beam, that which is called the shifting one, was too short, and Joseph knew not what to do, because it wasn't the right length. So then he was going, how am I going to fix this, right? The young child Jesus said to his father Joseph, lay down the two pieces of wood and make them even at the end next unto thee, like is part of the middle part. And Joseph did as the young child said unto him. And Jesus stood at the other end and took hold the shorter beam and stretched it and made it equal with the other. Now you see what he did. I'll do that in a second. And his father Joseph saw and marveled, and he embraced the young child and kissed him, saying, happy am I, for the God hath given me such a young child. So you can see what happened. There were two beams he has to make a bed, and one was shorter. Now, this one was way too short, because I guess all the stuff was made for the longer beam, and someone cut it too short. So what does Jesus do? He says, you take the two beams, you make them even by you, and then Jesus stood back where the uneven part was and just took the wood and stretched it. I mean, this just brings Jesus to life on how it was to raise a child with that kind of divine power. And some of the things that you can imagine that he got into grief with, right? And so let's see, one more. This is just a beautiful one that you might like. And Joseph sent his son James to bind fuel and carry it into the house. And the young child Jesus also followed him. And as James was gathering of, like, let's say the wood, they called it a different name back then, a viper bit the hand of James. So you're even seeing here that James is his brother. I mean, that gives you some more definitive proof. And as he was sore afflicted and ready to perish, this is his brother, Jesus is there. Jesus came near and breathed upon the bite. And straightway the pain ceased, and the serpent burst. And forthwith James continued whole. He healed them. So this is what it was like living with Jesus. I mean, he had these powers early on. And that's what I think is fascinating. You can see that he had that divine connection. He knew who he was. And they say even Pythagoras knew like of I think 8 lifetimes of when he was born. He knew his previous 8 lifetimes, right? And he could actually see above people, like some of their lifetimes, sort of like Edgar Cayce when he went into a trance, right? Jesus came in here full knowing who he was and had all this divine capability. He just had to understand the ways of the world and all the nuances and all the rules and regulations and all the, people don't understand the breadth of this beauty, right? So you can see him kind of being acculturating to the norms and mores of this world. And that's what he's trying to do and struggling with. And then this, and I won't go into it in detail, but remember in the Bible, and they said that Jesus went to the temple and he was like an orator, just giving them all this knowledge. That's here in the Gnostic Gospels. You see, that matches verbatim. And, I just think that gives you just a beautiful rendition, if you will, of the story of Jesus as he was growing up as a child and what it would have been like to be his mom and dad and having this great, miraculous child, but also having to deal during that era. I think this is 2,000 years ago. And the closed-mindedness and the rules and the regulations. So that's a little bit of Jesus as he was growing up. And then what I'd like to do is I'm going to read to you and I'm going to tell you even where I got it. This is the Gnostic Scriptures. I'll come in close. This is Bentley Layton. And it's entitled The Gnostic Scriptures, the New Translation. And so you can get this and read it. It's a beautiful authoritative work on this. And I love it. And so I'm going to be reading from that one, but I can tell you many years ago what I have been reading, and it's all dog-eared. This one is the Nag Hammadi Library that has all those texts, 50-something texts in it. Good. So this is another really good book here. And this is the Nag Hammadi Library, the definitive translation of the Gnostic Scriptures, complete in 1 volume with James M. Robinson. So you'll see, you can find these books. You can even go online now because so much that was hidden is now being revealed and it has complete access because of the internet. So it's just beautiful. Later on, if you guys are interested, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. They have a Gospel of Mary too. And then I went through this book. It's really old and haggard, but I used to, with the children, we would take a verse every day and read when we had dinner. And this is the Secret Teachings of Jesus, the Gospel of Thomas. But one of the original ones you can see, one of the first ones is this. These are the hidden and private teachings that the living Jesus uttered, and which Dionysius Jude Thomas wrote down. And he said, whoever finds the meaning of these sayings will not taste death. Now remember what this is saying. This is the hidden and private teachings of the living Jesus. So that's different than gospels that are written based on someone hearing something, right? And a story that's written down. So that's why I thought these were very important, because these are of the living Jesus talking to his disciples privately. And so this is one other insight here. Jesus said, if those who lead you to say, see, the kingdom is in the sky, then the birds of the sky will precede you. If they say to you, it is in the sea, then the fish will precede you. Rather, the kingdom is inside of you, and it is outside of you. When you come to know yourselves, then you will become known, and you will realize that it is you who are the children of the living light. But if you will not know yourselves, you dwell in poverty, and it is you who are that poverty. So what is he saying? And that's, we're going to go to the pearl. You are the children of the living light. Remember that I just said that because you're going to see that in the pearl. And that it's inside of you. So I would say to you, what's inside of you? Your soul, your spirit, maybe the great pearl of wisdom. So you're going to see how this correlates. And this is absolutely beautiful. It's not long, and I'm going to read it to you from the beginning. And it's got all the scholarly, this is the Greek version, and it's called the Hymn of the Pearl. And it's or the Hymn of Jude Thomas, the apostle in the country of the Indians. He's presenting a Hellenistic myth of the human soul's entry into the body incarnation. So, but I'm just going to go, instead of what they're saying it means, let's go into the story. Given what I've already kind of fed you, right? It's beautiful. And so this is one of the apostles saying the story to everyone. And even the Sufis will speak in parables and stories because you might get a little bit of it wrong through the, hundreds of years, but the gist of the story will remain true, right? You'll remember that. This is beautiful. The journey down to Egypt. Now remember, we already said, Jesus has told us that we are living light, children of the living light. Remember that when I start reading this. When I was an infant, too young to talk, in my father's palace, reposing in the wealth and luxury of those who nourished me. My parents equipped me with supplies and sent me out from the east, our country, on a mission. Remember the mission. It's the son, and they're giving him everything he needs, and they're sending him on a mission. From the wealth of their treasuries, they gave me a great cargo, which was light, so that I could carry it by myself. Think about light, wisdom, right? He can carry it, it's within him. The cargo, then he goes on to say, the cargo was gold from the high country, silver plate of the great treasuries, emerald jewels of India, and agates of Khosan. And they armed me with steel. They took away from me the jewel-studded garment shot with gold that they had made out of love for me, and the robe of yellow color tailored to my size. But they made an agreement with me and pressed it on my mind so that I might not forget it, and said, if you go down to Egypt and bring from there the one pearl which resides there near the ravenous dragon, you shall put back on that jewel-studded garment and the robe which you like. And you shall be a herald for our kingdom, along with your well-remembered brother. Remember that, well-remembered brother. Who might that be? Jesus. So I started from the east on a hard and frightening road, accompanied by 2 guides. Could they be angels? For I was unused to traveling on this road. I passed the borders of the Morasani, where there is in the inn of the eastern traveling merchants, and reached the land of the Babylonians. Since I entered Egypt, the guides departed, who had traveled with me. So they left. So I'm thinking they're angels. And I rushed directly to the dragon and I camped near its den, lying in wait for it to grow drowsy and fall asleep so that I might make away with the pearl. Being on my own, I put on a disguise and would have seemed alien even to my own people. So he's putting on something. Could it be a body? Do you see? If he's light, let's see. But there I saw a cousin of mine from the East, a free person, gracious, handsome, and young, a child of members of court, of the court, right, the king, who came and kept me company, and whom I made a friend and partner in my travels, and had as a constant companion, and exhorted to guard against the Egyptians and against intercourse with their impurities. So don't mingle, don't intermingle with these people, right? So I put on their style of dress so that I might not look like one who was foreign and had come from abroad to get the pearl. So he's like incognito. He's trying to fit in, right? And at least the Egyptians arose, lest the Egyptians arose and the dragon against me. But somehow they learned that I was not from their land. So how might they have figured that out? Either was there treachery or could they sense it? Could they know it? I mean, how did this happen? They gave me a mixture of cunning and treachery, and I tasted their food. I did not any longer recognize that I was a child of the great king, but rather acted as a servant to their king. Maya. Think of India. You know, Maya, illusion, right? Delusion. And I even came to the pearl for which my parents had sent me on the mission, but sank into deep sleep under the heaviness of their food. And next the kings of Parthena, those in office and the leaders of the East, decided that in my case I should not be left in Egypt. So too the members of court wrote to me declaring as follows. Oh, sorry. This is the access there's a preface to this. So he's in this deep sleep. He's tasting their food. He doesn't remember who he is or even has a mission. And now he's paying allegiance to this king, like the enemy, right? This is what you have to realize. If you were a mother and you were a father and you sent your son on a mission and he got drugged up and hypnotized and forgot his way, what would you do? Would you be crying? Would you try to figure a way to get to him? Yes. This is important. Now my parents also noticed me suffering these things, and they suffered over me, right? As any mother or father would. So a proclamation was heralded in our kingdom that all should present themselves at our court. So they assembled everyone. And next to the kings of Parthena, those in office and the leaders of the East, so they brought the whole high court from all the lands. And they decided that in my case, I should not be left in Egypt. They're going to have to go on a rescue mission or somehow. How are they going to do this? So too, the members of our court wrote to me, declaring as follows. This is like, I don't know if it's a paper or if it's imprinted, like in the Akashic records, like sending forth a message, a direct one into this kid to wake him up, right? And this is what it says. From your father, the King of Kings, and your mother who rules the East, and their brothers who are second after them, to our child in Egypt, peace. Arise and become sober out of your sleep. Listen to the words written in this letter. Remember that you are a child of kings. You've fallen under a servile yoke. Call to mind your garment shot with gold. Trying to make him remember, right? Call to mind the pearl for which you were sent on a mission to Egypt. Your name has been called to the book of life, along with that of your brother. That's why I think Jesus is Jesus, whom you have taken to yourself in our kingdom. So the king confirmed it, and as an ambassador, because of the threat of the Babylonian children and the tyrannical demons of the labyrinth. But for my part, I gave a start when I perceived its voice. So this is a voice, a command. I'm thinking a frequency, a vibration, it's intention, right? It helps awaken him. And I took it up and I kissed it and I read. Think about in the scrolls of honey and even the Bible. And I saw the scrolls and I ate them and I tasted them and they were like honey. He wakes up, right? But what was written there concerned that which was engraved in my heart. So it's in the heart that it awakens. That all of our gifts and our knowledge of our missions in our heart, it's engraved there, right? And on the spot, I remembered that I was a child of kings and that my people demanded my freedom. I also remembered the pearl for which I had been sent on the mission to Egypt. And the fact that I had been coming against the fearsome dragon for booty, he'd actually seen it. And I subdued it by calling out my father's name. He goes to the dragon. He calls out his father's name. Vibration, intention, knowledge. It opens the portals. It opens the doors, right? Remember, he calls out. By calling out my father's name, and I snatched the pearl and turned to carry it away to my parents. And I took off the dirty clothing and left it behind in their land. Immediately I went straight, and they've got, where they can't decipher it here, to the road leading to the light of our eastern home. And while on the road, I found a female being who lifted me up. So that's like the female counterpart, and she lifting him into the light like an angel. Do you see? Remember, I said on my near death, it was like bubbles of light came, lifted him up, but it's female. So she got me up from sleep and giving, as it were, an oracle by her voice, just talking to him, right? With which she guided me to the light. That to me is going back to heaven. Do you see that? He's discarding his body. That's the clothes, right? And the angel, the beautiful light beams that I saw, lifting him up and guiding him to the light, right? Indeed, at times I had the royal garment of silk before my eyes. And with familial love leading me and drawing me on, I passed the labyrinth. And leaving Babylon behind on the left, I reached Messian, which is a great coast. But I could not recall my splendor, for it was a while I was still a boy and quite young that I had left it behind in my father's palace. He can't quite remember, right? But when suddenly I saw my garment reflected as in a mirror, I perceived it in my whole self as well. That's the gnosis, you know it, right? For though we derived from one and the same, we were partially divided, and then again we were one with a single form. So that's this counterpart. It's this garment that you put on, and even we talked in that path of light in the Bruce Codice, Jesus dons this beautiful garment of light that then comes back upon him. That's the merging. Do you see that? This is the merging of his other part of his soul. And he remembers it all. Now he's totally one, right? For though we derived from one, he said, and the same we were partially divided. So maybe part of your soul comes to earth. Do you see that? And when you come back, you reemerged, you have it again. And then again, we're one with a single form. He's reunited with his self and all of his full glory and his knowledge. Nay, also the treasurers who had brought this garment, the treasurers, I saw as two beings, but there existed a single form in both, one single royal token consisting of two halves. And they had my money and wealth in their hands and gave me my reward, the fine garment of bright colors. Remember the coat of many colors from the Bible? Which was embroidered with gold, precious stones, and pearls to give a suitable impression. It was clasped on the collar, and the image of the King of Kings was woven all through it. So you'll start to see, even in the Bible, they're talking about, in even Revelations, that you have symbols. Do you see this? So that's the imprint, that's the knowledge that you're holding, the vibration. Stones of lapis lazuli had been agreeably fixed to the collar. And I saw in turn that impulses of acquaintance, that's knowledge, gnosis, were rippling throughout it. So when you put it on, it has the knowledge within it that then kind of connects with you, and you have it, you embody it. And that it was ready to utter discourse, meaning to give you that knowledge. Then I heard it speaking. It is I who belong to the one who is stronger than all human beings, and for whose sake I was designed by the Father himself. I'm going to read that again. This is who we are. How many religions have told us that we're less than? What is this telling us in the Gospels? Let's reread this again. Then I heard it speaking. It is I who belong to the one who is stronger than all human beings, and for whose sake I was designed by the Father himself. Now you start to see it correlates with the Bible. We are made in the similitude of God, right? And for my part, I took note of my mature age, and all the royal impulses reposed on me. All of its energy increased. So now he's starting to recognize, and all of this knowledge is coming into him, and he's radiant in all of his glory. Do you see that? It's increasing in magnitude. Thrust out by that being's hand, it hastened to the one who was receiving it. And a longing aroused me to rush and meet that being and to receive it. That's God. Think of his parents, his mother, his father, the King and Queen of Heaven. He's coming, being embraced in all that full magnitude. Now he knows who he is. He's got his mission. He went through all the vicissitudes. He got the pearl of wisdom. That's wisdom, and we're going to think about that for a second. What is a pearl? But where's the longing? Now he remembers, and you long for it. You thirst for the knowledge, right? The thirsting for the living waters. Now some of these metaphors in the Bible start to make sense, but on a higher, more grander scale. And a longing aroused me to rush and meet that being and to receive it. Spread out, and there's a couple words missing, of colors. I was brought back. And I completely clothed myself in my superior royal robe. Now he's fully embodied with knowledge. And that's exactly the whole thing in that path of light that Jesus does in front of his disciples. Now, this is the end. Once I had put it on, I arose into the realm of peace belonging to the reverential awe. And I bowed my head and I prostrated myself before the splendor of the Father who had sent it to me. For it was I who had done his commands. And likewise, it was he who had kept the promise. And I mingled at the doors of his archaic royal building. He took delight in me and received me with him in his palace. And all his subjects were singing hymns with reverent voices. Think of the angels singing, right? He suffered me also to be ushered into the king's court in his company, so that with all my gifts and the pearl, I might make an appearance before the king himself. Isn't that absolutely magnificent? And it gives it a fuller, more grand understanding of our mission. And when you think of this, the pearl, how is a pearl formed? I can understand now why in a lot of the legends you have the dragon, the pearl, right? And even in the Chinese culture, you have the pearl. It's the pearl of wisdom. Even the Mormons have, I think they wrote a book called The Pearl of Great Price, right? So, but think about how is a pearl formed? It's in the oyster shell. There has to be a disturbance, like sand or something, and it irritates it. It's a struggle. So what is it doing? It's coating it, right? As it's growing so it's coating it, it's solidifying it, making something absolutely beautiful out of a trial and a tribulation, some irritant, right? And that's the alchemy. You take something that can be lower and you make it magnificent. You're taking the lead, turning it into gold. And in this case, it's a pearl. It's sand into a pearl. And you're doing it, the oyster's doing it. It's creating this pearl, right? With all the trials and vicissitudes that it's having to go through. So they're using a pearl because it has been made into beauty from something less than, and it's now more magnificent and it's beautiful for all of its journey, right? So if he was sent on a mission, the mission, he has to then, to me, this is at least my interpretation, and we'll see if you guys have any other ideas, but that's the soul. And as if it's a pearl, then you're going to have to go through great strife. Think what an oyster is doing, right? To manufacture this pearl. But the mother and father are sending their son into Egypt on this mission to get this pearl. So that's their whole kingdom. You're seeing the analogy here, right? They're gifting him with all this knowledge so that he can accomplish the mission. Could this be us coming from light? Because you're seeing from light, right? You're coming down, you're taking a human body, clothing it so that you don't even recognize it, right? Coming in, and sometimes on earth, if we taste of the food, right? On earth, and we forget. That's the veil, the kiss of forgetfulness. We forget our divinity. And I think that's what this is about. We forget we are the sons and daughters of God Most High to shine our brilliance. But when you come back, if that mission was to come to earth, to reclaim the pearl, to reclaim the wisdom, the divine wisdom, to go through these trials and tribulations, to gather the beauty. Does that perfect you? Think about if we do it correctly as we go through. And he's saying their son had treachery in the world. He lost his way. He was asleep. He forgot. But a mother and father aren't going to leave their son. They're not. They're going to try to figure out a way to awaken them, to find his way back home, right? That's, I believe, our journey. And we have our Father, Mother, God. God is so much more grander than all these religions. It's unbelievable. But that divinity is within us, that knowledge. And I think that's what Jesus was trying to tell us. These things I do, ye can do these and greater in John. And you see that kind of the elder brother went. So, and Jesus said, come to me. He's trying to tell us. He was the template for how to do this. Awaken, awaken. And I think that's the whole story, is for us to awaken to our magnificence, to really know who we are. Do not taste of this world. The food, right? That's all the beliefs, the culture, whatever. It's making us go to sleep, this hypnotic asleepness. And so we have to remember, listen, have the letter sent to us in our hearts and awaken us. Who are we? What was our mission? And that's that magnificence. And in this path of light, I can't encourage you even more to read this. I've already done this. This was months ago we did this path of light. This hymn of the pearl matches it, except that with the path of light, it was Jesus, that he came back in his risen body, teaching the disciples, and they were watching this robe of light come down and descend upon him in all this brilliance, and he took it up, and they witnessed what they're just describing here with Jesus. And what's he saying? This is us. This is us. And we can do it. We got to remember. Have that engraved in your heart and let your heart awaken to your truth and your own magnificence of who you are. You're a divine being of light that's sent on a journey down here. And we're going to grab the pearl of wisdom and cleave to it, bring it back home. And what is that? Wisdom and strength, our virtues, kindness, compassion. You don't know how strong you are until you are right in the throes of something. And you have to find that and prove it to yourself and others. You don't know how much patience you can have until that situation comes upon you and it's requested of you to stretch even farther than you thought you could stretch. That's the coating of the pearl with all the irritants, right? So all the things that come to us, think of all the irritants and all the people that just try you to the very core. Mm-hmm. If we can come up with the patience, that's the coating of the pearl. If we can love our enemy, if we can have courage, if we can stand up for truth when everyone else is decrying that we're not saying the truth, can we have the courage to talk about our testimonies, about what we believe truth is, or do what we think we should be doing? Amidst all the naysayers, right? That's courage. That's boldness. Are those the layers on the pearl? The wisdom? And we've attained, we're growing, we're gathering this to ourselves. So I believe that that's our quest, and it is a quest, and we're on a mission. We just have to remember it for who we are. And then it makes life's journey here a whole lot easier if we remember that we are the divine sons and daughters, and we hold that. We are light. And you know the garments? That's knowledge. That's love. That's purity. Because as your heart awakens, your light body expands. And then everyone sings the glory, right? So I believe that at least that's my interpretation. I'm sure there'll be many others, but I wanted to at least give that to you as a beautiful parable from the Gnostic Gospels. Did any of you, did you get any other insights from this story? Did you like it?
Liked it.
I loved it.
Perfect metaphor.
Perfect metaphor. Did you?
The transmutation. The sand is transmuted to the pearl.
To the pearl. Sand to a pearl. And then think of the virtues. The virtues are what we're acquiring through the irritations of earth. Each time it irritates the oyster, right? It has to put another layer. Well, all as the struggles that we're going through, we're acquiring the virtues if we do it right. And then we turn into a luminous pearl with knowledge, with love, with kindness, strength. And that, I think, is the struggle and the journey. And then we become the pearl, most beautiful pearl, right? And then we merge. I do believe that what they're referencing there, and I've heard that only a part of our light comes to earth. So maybe when they're talking about the other half, remember, and that they merge, that's maybe when we come back into our full completeness on the other side. So any other ideas? You like it? So isn't that beautiful?
Yes, thing where I was shown that the New Jerusalem in the book of Revelation is really us and their transcendent self. That after we go through the tribulation and the trials of the tribulation,
Yes.
that we become the New Jerusalem. And then the 12 stones of the breastplate become the foundation of the new temple. And we don't need an external light because we are the light.
We become the light.
Yes, we don't need a temple because we are the temple. But I thought it was interesting that all 12 gates are made out of pearl. So I thought how interesting that we enter into this temple state by through the tribulation.
Through the tribulation.
That was just so meaningful.
With the pearls, and then they have that breastplate, right? Aaron. And it's interesting that they're using it with jewels, right? With the gemstones. But they each represent something. But yes, but think of the pearl, of all the stones and of all the gems. How was it formed? With irritation.
Yeah.
Now, diamond, of course, the coal is a pressure, and we can turn like that to be strong as a diamond, because that's what it's going to take down here. But the end result when they use pearl, isn't that? I think it's just beautiful.
That is.
So I think we should start a whole thing of us wearing pearls. It went out of vogue. I think we should put it back in with the significance. So
Other color pearls, black,
yes,
golden pearls.
they have
gray.
golden pearls and pink. They've got the dark, the gray. Yes, I think they're beautiful.
Me too.
So I wanted to close, and then we're almost on time. It's beautiful, and we can just close with a beautiful prayer. And then if anyone has any questions, actually I should probably check before we close. Is there any questions here? Let me chat. Let me go on this chat. I love the stories of Jesus as a child. Thank you, Judy Hood. Thank you, Judy. Okay, beautiful, Donna. Thank you. And I'm sure there's a Elizabeth Ann. Okay, Marlon, thank you for coming. Look at all these beautiful people. So if you have any other questions or you think of them, you can, type it to me and I'll try to respond to you. But I gave you the books and where you can find them. And I hope what I have done is dropped a seed of curiosity for you to start to investigate these beautiful Gnostic Gospels. So I'm going to sign off here, but let's just say a beautiful prayer. God of our heart, God of our realization, come to us now like the beautiful robe of light. Awaken in us our many gifts, our coat of many colors. Let us remember our mission. Let us divine the true nature down here so that we seek and become that beautiful pearl, that we can capture the pearl, and that we remember these beautiful gifts have this unbelievable purpose in our own true magnificence, and that we are loved beyond measure by our Father, Mother, God. May we bring that love down on earth to each and every person we meet, and so love, and so mote it be. Amen,
Amen.
amen, amen, and amen. And I would ask those of you who are on Zoom and those of you who are on Facebook Live, so that we can keep this beautiful center going. If you can go to www.ccosl.com/donate so that we can have a little bit of that, the treasuries, to keep this treasury going. And we would appreciate it. And sending you love and light from the Cosmic Center of Spiritual Light. Namaste.